Most landlords don't lose money on bad properties. They lose it on bad tenants they saw coming from a mile away. And the brutal truth is, the warning signs were there on day one, hiding in plain sight like a smoke detector with a dead battery. We need to talk about the behavioral fingerprints that quietly predict an eviction 6 months before you're standing in front of a judge. This isn't theory, this is pattern recognition built from thousands of landlord horror stories, housing court data, and the kind of hard-won wisdom that only comes after someone trashes your rental and disappears on the first of the month. Let's start with a catalyst. Because evictions rarely happen in a vacuum. They're the final chapter of a story that started at the application stage. When a prospective tenant calls you at odd hours, rushes the move-in timeline, or offers to pay extra just to skip the background check, your nervous system is sending you a signal you should probably listen to. The single most predictive early behavior isn't missed rent, it's inconsistent communication. If a tenant goes quiet when you ask a simple maintenance question, or takes 72 hours to confirm a move-in date, that avoidance pattern almost always resurfaces when the rent is due. Communication style in the honeymoon phase is basically a dress rehearsal for how they'll handle conflict later. Then there's the partial payment trap. And oh, this one is elegant in its destruction. A tenant who pays 80% of rent in month 2 with a very reasonable explanation has just taught you everything you need to know about how month 5 is going to feel. Behavioral economists call this intention signaling. And what it's signaling is that your lease is now in negotiation. Here's where it gets psychologically interesting. Many landlords extend grace because the tenant seems like a good person, and good people sometimes hit hard times, right? But there's a critical difference between a tenant who proactively communicates a hardship and one who ghosts you until you knock on the door. And that difference predicts outcomes more reliably than credit score alone. Let's talk history for a second, because housing courts across the country have been logging this data for decades. Studies consistently show that tenants who receive their first late notice within the first 90 days of a lease are statistically more likely to face eviction proceedings before month 6 than those who pay on time in that same window, regardless of what their credit report said. Now, address the myth head on. A lot of landlords believe that a high credit score is a force field against eviction risk. A score can reflect a past financial life that no longer exists. Job loss, divorce, a medical event, and behavior in your unit, not a number from 3 years ago, is what actually governs your outcome. The other big misconception is that property damage is a separate issue from eviction risk, when in reality, they're deeply correlated warning signs. A tenant who doesn't report a leaking pipe, parks in unauthorized spots repeatedly, or lets unauthorized occupants move in is demonstrating a fundamental disregard for the lease agreement, and that attitude doesn't stay contained to minor infractions for long. So what do you actually do with this information? You build a tenant behavior monitoring system that starts at lease signing and tracks communication, response time, payment date patterns, maintenance report frequency, and neighbor complaint history, not as surveillance, but as stewardship. Catching a pattern at month 2 is the difference between a conversation and a courtroom. The practical lesson history keeps handing us is this: your written lease is only as strong as your willingness to enforce it consistently and early. A gentle, documented reminder sent on day 2 of a late payment protects you legally and psychologically far more than waiting until day 15 out of politeness. Position size matters here too. If a single tenant represents your entire rental income, your emotional decision-making is compromised because you need them to be okay even when the data says they're not. Diversifying your units or your income streams gives you the rational distance to act on what you observe rather than what you hope. At the end of the day, real estate investing is a long game built on boring, disciplined systems. And the landlords who win aren't the ones with the best properties. They're the ones with the best processes. Screening, documentation, consistent enforcement, and emotional detachment from the outcome are the unglamorous toolkit that keeps your cash flow intact. And here's the philosophical close. You can't control whether a tenant struggles, but you can control whether you saw it coming and had a plan. Rational preparation isn't pessimism. It's the only form of optimism that actually pays rent. Whether you're ready to start investing, need contracting work done on your properties, or want to connect with the right lenders, check out our links in the description below, and let's get you moving in the right direction.